Shalom, shalom. Welcome back. This is the Bread and Wine Podcast. Once again, this is the Bread and Wine Podcast. Lechem Weyayin. Just like a pimp named Slipback, just like a Tribe Called Quest, you have got to say the entire thing. The Bread and Wine Podcast. With one of your hosts, Yahusha said, and the other host,
Caleb.
Ben Yashara. Why you?
Because you kept with your other host. I'm like, am I ready to go? Am I ready to say it?
I'm ready to say it. Yeah, you should have just said it.
Okay.
Anyway, but you did say it. Anyway, so we got an episode today. We're gonna talk about some Christian myths. Oh, excuse me. Rewind that back. We're gonna talk about some myths in Christianity.
Really one myth, but
yeah, really. We focusing on one, but
who knows where we'll end up.
We'll probably talk about some other ones, but
particularly just to be modern Protestant Christianity with a special and particular emphasis on the black church. So if you're like coming out of Catholicism or something like that, and you're like, I don't believe that.
Doesn't pertain to you.
Probably not talking about you. For most black people in America, at least, especially if you're in like any place from, I say, Maryland on down.
Maryland.
Yeah.
Not Maryland, Merlin.
Yeah, whatever.
Merlin on down.
You are more than likely coming from a Protestant Christian tradition.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, of some sort, Pentecostal, Baptist. I don't know about Anabaptist, but
especially from Baltimore.
Baptist. You're coming from some type of Protestant movement. A lot of the things that we would say you would probably hear from the black church, an emphasis on preaching. So if you're doing something like, let's say you're doing Communion Sunday once a month, you are not coming from you're coming from a Protestant background if you're doing communion once a month, because if you go to something like Catholicism, that is the service. They call it the Eucharist. That is the service.
So the Eucharist?
Yeah, the Eucharist is basically communion in a sense. Yeah.
But you know what? I had a conversation about some other Eucharist. It was actually interesting. I found out who came up with the original thought in terms of how they have it today.
Yeah.
Like they say this is the Messiah's body, like physical body and his blood.
Oh yeah, what's it called? Transubstantiation? Yeah.
I didn't get that word, but that's a new one. I looked that up.
Yeah, I think that's the word,
I think it was Ignatius.
Yeah, it was late.
He was the first one. But what he said in because he was going against, this is a sidebar. This isn't what we're talking about, but he brought up Eucharist and boom, boom, boom. It was in one of his books, or because he was going against a particular sect that did not believe in the resurrection, did not believe that Yahusha came in the flesh, right? So he was specifically going against them and was basically saying that the Eucharist, he said they deny even partaking in the Eucharist, which is his body and his blood. He said, but that was like his opinion in terms of it being literal.
Well,
it wasn't until later on
that
they kind of took from him and then made it to where it is now. But originally it's an opinion. It wasn't something that was, because usually they say like apostolic succession. It wasn't something that was given, that type of understanding wasn't given by the apostles. It was not passed down. It started with him having a conversation going against another sect that didn't believe in most of it.
Well, a lot of the Catholic traditions, that's how it is. Like when you look at a lot of their they'll say, oh yeah, this came from this church father, and then you read that church father and you realize that church father was not talking about what they made it out to be.
Yeah.
He might have been making a point, or he might have stated something as a good idea, or whatever the case may be, but they took it because of over time their doctrines have developed, and now they're looking back and they're reading their reasoning into what that church father is saying.
Found another one. about a church father. Genesis 6, where
Yeah, that's late.
but
I know what you're talking about.
Who was it?
I don't remember who it was, but that's late.
It was Augustine of Hippo.
Yeah.
Augustus of Hippo.
Yeah, because he didn't like Enoch.
Yeah.
So he came with an alternate explanation. I'm telling you, a lot of this stuff is late.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting, too. I found that one out the other day, too.
Yeah, just in case you don't know what we're talking about, there's a teaching that Genesis 6 is actually the children of Cain versus the children of Seth. That's a late interpretation because, again, he didn't like Enoch. That's basically what it boils down to.
Augustus of Hippo or Augustine of Hippo, something like that?
Yeah,
he's the one.
But just to give a brief...
I think he was a black man, too.
A lot of them were black. Hebrew Israelites don't like that fact, but, yes, a lot of them were black and they weren't Israelites.
He was a bishop.
Yeah, that's why you can't...
He was a bishop of Algeria.
Yeah, that's the reason why you can't stick on the black thing, because a lot of those early church fathers were black men, and they were Gentiles. So you can't keep focusing on black. It's just not good enough.
Black.
Moving on.
AME, Black, Baltimore, Maryland.
I remember where I was.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. So,
no problem.
And then you made me forget. No, I kind of remember. So, to give a brief history on Protestant, and we got to give this little tidbit so that we can understand why we're breaking down some of these myths or myth. Back in the 1500s, Catholicism basically everything was intermixed. So this idea like separation of church and state, the reason why that was a big thing is because back in those days, the king was in submission to the Pope, right? So you had certain people, depending on the kingdom. Sometimes the religious leadership was the king. But moving on, you had Martin Luther, not king, just Martin Luther, and some other people who were reading biblical text, and they were translating, they were doing other things. They were realizing that a lot of the things that the Catholic Church was doing at that time was very much unbiblical. So they began to interpret the scripture and things in a way that they thought was more original, and they broke away and they started creating their own churches that were protesting the Catholic Church. That's what Protestant means, protesting the Catholic Church. Now, from this, you actually get a lot of the doctrines that a lot of black Christians have. You get it specifically because they're protesting the Catholic Church. For example, in Catholicism, the belief is that the more good works you do, you can essentially earn your way into heaven. Well, when Martin Luther and these other Protestants started reading the works of Paul and they see him talking about the law, they started interpreting the law the same way that the Catholic Church was interpreting good works. So they started saying, the Jews were trying to earn their way into heaven by doing the law. A lot of us who keep the Torah, when we start talking to Protestant Christians, a lot of their argumentation against the law is actually coming from that mindset. And we have to almost let them know we don't view the law that way, right? Because that's how they're viewing it, because that's how Martin Luther viewed it, because that's what they thought.
We're basically pronomian.
Right.
It's a new word.
We'll talk about that in a future episode.
Oh, yeah.
But for now, look it up yourself.
I'm looking forward to it.
But
I got a story based on it.
Yeah. One of the big things, stop cutting me off.
My bad.
One of the big things about the Protestant church, right, which you're going to hear a lot of Catholics criticize, and some of these criticisms are good. Worship. We've made worship essentially praise and singing. But worship, if you look in the Bible, was a lot more detailed. One of the big things about worship was actually sacrifice and other things. Catholics will jump on Protestants about that because when Protestants talk about worship, they're basically only talking about singing songs and praise, and that's pretty much it. Another thing is emphasis on the preaching. The preaching, the sermon became a huge part of the Protestant church. Another big thing, evangelicalism. That's why if anybody actually follows politics and you hear criticisms of the the conservatives, you'll hear the evangelical Christian church. That is a huge part of Protestantism, especially in America, going out and trying to evangelize and everything else. These are really big emphasis that is specific to the Protestant church. Now, when the slaves were brought over to America, majority of the inhabitants in America being Protestant Christians, especially in the South, that is what a lot of the slaves picked up on. Now, it doesn't mean that a lot of the slave owners were Protestant Christians. A lot of them actually were either Jewish. A lot of them actually followed scientific racism and those type of ideas, and that's the reason why they in their minds they justified slavery a certain way. The biblical justifications that you hear for slavery, like the curse of Ham and all this other stuff, that was really for the people. But for the slave owners themselves, most of them had very different justifications. So
some of them definitely were Christians.
Some of them were Christians, absolutely.
Protestant Christians.
Some of them were Protestant Christians, absolutely. I'm not taking that away.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we have to look at things holistically and not with a one-track mind. A lot of them were
painting just one brush.
Yeah, a lot of them were either Jewish or they were following, and so, again, some of them still were Jewish and Christian, but they still had scientific racism and various degrees of early evolution that really focused on race as opposed to just animal and all this other stuff. They had a lot of these views too that allowed them to justify it to themselves.
That's why I got a slave Bible.
Yeah. So now that we have that background as to why black people specifically have Protestant views, and then of course with us having our own black culture, we started to develop our own views within this Protestant culture. A lot of it a lot of the Protestant culture developed in Europe, but we started developing our own stuff on top of that based on these ideals that came from Europe that never affected us. And then we bring that into today. It becomes a lot. So, again, the way we emphasize the preaching and when you start going to a lot of churches, the preaching is just motivational speech. Mm-hmm. It's just motivational speech with a Bible. Or you have a lot of black churches, like when I do security, there's one church, I don't want to get too detailed, but they focus a lot on politics in their sermons, and they're not the only ones that do that. A lot of black churches do that. They focus on politics.
Social gospel.
Yes, social gospel, which that's something we're not going to cover in this episode. Find out on the next episode of the Bread and Wine podcast. But
Said Martin Luther King Jr. preached it. Oh, my bad.
Yeah, but it's a lot. But you have to have that foundation to understand where a lot of these myths came from. Some of these myths actually do go all the way back to the early church fathers. Some of them carried out through the Catholic Church, and some of them specifically started with the Protestant movement, and some of them started even after that, around the time of the early 1900s when black people actually were free. But we'll start with the main one, and then we'll just kind of go from there. But I just want to emphasize again, this episode is primarily going to be focused on the black Protestant Christian church. Primarily. So don't come over here telling us about the Catholics and all that. We're not talking about them today because most black people aren't Catholics, at least not in America.
Well, that was a lot.
My bad.
Yeah. So, if heaven was always the goal for us, then why did Yahuwah create the earth? What's the purpose of the earth? For us just to pass by it, then it gets destroyed, and then we go live in heaven, then that's it? Happy story?
Or you go to hell.
Oh, yeah, you go to hell? So, anyway, that's really one of the talking points today, is that all dogs do not go to heaven.
I would say no dogs go to heaven, but I know people aren't going to like that.
You saying animals don't go to heaven?
Mm-mm.
Well, then who goes to heaven?
Let's see, the Father, the Son, and the angels who come down to give us messages. They go back. Yeah.
So we don't go to heaven when we die?
Mm-mm.
Where do we go when we die?
Well, according to Scripture, Sheol, which just means the grave. Sorry to disappoint you.
We go to the grave when we die.
Yeah, you definitely go to the grave. And as far as your soul, or your consciousness, however you want to look at that, but I would stick with nefesh, soul. That goes into a holding place, still called Sheol. Now, during the Second Temple time period, Sheol was divided into two places, one being Abraham's bosom, and the other basically being a place where temporary punishments were dished out for the wicked. So there's some people that say that that's just a Second Temple myth. There's other people that say, no, that's the truth, because Yahusha gave a parable about that.
Gave an analogy for
Yeah, gave an analogy for it. So
something that you would possibly understand to point you to a different, to point you to something.
So, and then of course, the Book of Enoch seems to allude to that as well.
Even Second Esdras too.
And Second Esdras is.
I know.
Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit outside the topic as far as which one, whether it's Abraham's bosom or is it just, a place where you go and you're just kind of housed there. Mm-hmm. For now, all we're going to say is you go to Sheol. So
yeah. So basically in terms of that, let me go to Daniel. I'm going to Daniel 12:2. Daniel 12:2 specifically talks about something prophetic. So verse 1, at the time shall arise Michael, the great prince of, matter of fact, let me read it from the Septuagint. Sorry, y'all. I like to read from the Septuagint. And at that time, Michael, the great prince, shall stand up and shall stand over the children of your people, and there shall be a time of tribulation, such tribulation that has not been for a time that was a nation on the earth until that time. And at the end, your people shall be delivered, every one that is found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to reproach and everlasting shame. So it sounds like when we unalive or when we die, we either go down into the dust, as Ox said, the Sheol, and then at the time concerning resurrection, it's either one or two places you're gonna go: everlasting life or everlasting reproach and shame. Now, in terms of this everlasting life, where would that actually be at? Because most people would say, oh, we go to heaven, especially in terms of, when the Messiah, when Mashiach died, he went down, he got the keys, all the prisoners that were down in hell, Adam, all the way to Abraham and beyond, all the prophets and all of them, he opened the door, and now all of them have ascended into the heavens with Messiah. In all honesty, we don't see that
at all.
We don't really see that anywhere in the text. Now, I will say this though. There is one place in the New Testament that some people will say this alludes to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Matthew 27, starting at 51. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And the earth shook, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were also opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the set-apart city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were watching him kept watching over Yahusha, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, truly this was the Son of Elohim. So the issue that I have, me specifically, with this is that it's going in chronological order, and then all of a sudden it says, yeah, and the tombs were emptied, and then many people were resurrected, the saints were resurrected, and they walked through the set-apart city after his resurrection. He hasn't resurrected yet. This whole passage goes in chronological order, and then all of a sudden it jumps here. It jumps to after his resurrection, and then it goes right back to say, oh yeah, and the centurion that was watching over him said, truly this was the Son of Elohim, after he saw the earthquake. Not after he saw the bodies resurrected from the grave, because he couldn't have seen that. So it was after the earthquake. Literally, hold on. It says, curtain was split from two, top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. So the only thing he could have seen or heard was about the earth shaking, the rocks being split, because it says that he saw the earthquake and what took place. They were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the son of Elohim." There were also many women there looking on from a distance who had followed Yahusha from Galilee, ministering to him, among who were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. And when it was evening, there came to be a rich man. So then, once again, it keeps going to talk about when he died. This particular passage, he about to get buried. He hasn't resurrected yet. So where does this thing come from?
So the other issue that a lot of people bring up is that in Acts 2:29.
Oh, he said.
Yeah, it says here, I'm just going to read from the CSB, just because this is the version that's just available right now. It says, "Brothers and sisters, I can confidently speak to you about the patriarch David. He is both dead and buried, and his tomb is with us to this day."
How come David didn't rise from the dead? He part of the saints.
The man wrote about 15% of the Tanakh. And not only did he write 15% of it, there are more books about David. We know more about David's life than almost anybody else in the entirety of the Tanakh. If you really think about it, we know more about David's life than probably even Moses. Because between 1st and 2nd Samuel, the beginning of 1st Kings, 1st and 2nd, well, 1st Chronicles, and then the things he reveals about himself in the Psalms, we know a lot about that man. And he was a man after Yah's own heart. He's still in the grave.
That's what Peter said.
So and then also, again, that account is only in Matthew that happened. It's only in Matthew.
Yeah, Mark, Luke, and John don't talk about it.
Don't talk about it. And nobody else talks about it outside. No other gospel account talks about it either outside of those four. Like, let's say one of the other apocryphal gospels, which the apocryphal gospels have problems anyway. But
then it says he was the first one resurrected from the dead, too.
He was the first one resurrected.
First fruits.
And then there's also a little issue of the fact, well, for some people, there might be an issue of the fact that it says all these people resurrected appeared to many. Where did they go?
It says they went to the holy city.
But where did they go?
In the city. They went to Jerusalem.
Right, but after that, where'd they go? Because when he ascended, only he ascended.
Oh, they kept living and they died.
Right? So there's some things there that make it look like that might have been added by somebody. Possibly added by somebody. And possibly added by a Christian sect that believed very early on that the resurrection had already occurred.
Because even Paul talks about that.
Yeah.
Paul even talks about that. He warns them to say, like, some of them have said that the resurrection has already happened. So, I'm just saying.
Yeah, so not saying that that's definite, but it's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
There's no textual evidence of this. There's no early text where that's omitted. We don't know. Mm-hmm. But that's what it looks like it could be. And that's the issue of textual criticism. I know some people might say, well, you're saying that the Bible has textual problems? Well,
yeah.
The original text do not. However, we don't have the original text, and there are some textual issues with some of the ones that we have. It's just a matter of learning them. Don't worry. Most of the things that are most important, you're not going to have textual issues with. It's just little things like that where doctrines have developed after the fact. And then some people might point to things that look like they're textual issues to support their doctrines. That's where you have a problem. Majority of the time, if you're just reading the text for itself and trying to get the truth, you're not going to really have an issue with these textual things.
Yeah, so I wanted to go to Baruch, but
Nah.
I'm not gonna go there right now. So going back to some locations of where in the scripture where it tells us where people go. This is John 5, starting at verse 28. Well, I'm gonna start at verse 25. Truly, truly, this is Yahusha speaking. John 5, starting at verse 25, going down to 29. Truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming and is now here, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of Elohim, and those who hear will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself. And he has given him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming. Right? Pause right there, because he said at verse 25, an hour is coming and is now here. So the one that's now here is when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of Elohim, and those who hear may live or will live. He's talking about the words that he's speaking. He's not talking about people that are literally dead, that have flatlined. Because it says now here, because if you hear and obey the Son, you receive eternal life. That's what John 3, 36, we're going to go back to that real quick. So, but then he says in verse 28, do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming. He doesn't say it's now here. He said an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. That's Daniel 12 and 2 being basically repeated.
To add on to that, Revelations 20. A lot of people talk about Judgment Day. One thing I've never heard is how Judgment Day fits into going to heaven. Because the teaching generally is people die and then they immediately go to heaven or hell. But then we also understand that there's a Judgment Day, which means it's a day where everybody gets judged. How do you rectify these two things? So Revelations makes it pretty clear. So 20, Revelations 20:11. And I saw a great white throne, and the one who was seated on it, from whose presence earth and heaven fled, and a place was not found for them. And I saw the dead, the great and the small. This is talking about how great they were in the earth, like people with a lot of power versus people with basically no power, right? Not talking about size. The great and the small standing before the throne, and books were open. And another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books according to their deeds.
The books.
And the sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them. Hades is
the grave.
Is the Greek equivalent, because remember, we're reading Revelation from a Greek translation. It's the Greek equivalent to the Hebrew Sheol, right? So it's saying Sheol is giving up the dead, right? Who were in them, and each one was judged according to their deeds. Now here's what's interesting. And death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. Sheol is normally translated as hell. So in the King James, it actually says death and hell were thrown into the lake of fire.
Hell is not the lake of fire.
Can't be.
I want to say that again. Hell is not the lake of fire.
But then watch what it says after this. This is continuing verse 14. This is the second death, the lake of fire.
Which isn't hell.
And if anyone was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire.
Which isn't hell.
Then you start verse 21. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away, and the sea did not exist any longer. That's a little bit more metaphorical than literal, but...
I think it's literal, but we can go from there.
Yeah, we'll move on.
I like the literal stuff.
And I saw the set-apart city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from Elohim.
I think that's literal, too.
That is literal. Prepared like a bride adorned for her husband.
Zion.
So, and then we got this last part here. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling of Elohim is with humanity, and he will take up residence with them, and they will be his people, and Elohim himself will be with them.
Where they at?
They're on earth.
Huh?
Now,
Thought they was in heaven.
you got to show me that.
Man, read it again. You ain't read it right. They in heaven. Read it again.
It says the city came down from heaven. So if it's that means it's leaving heaven.
Which heaven? The third one or the first one?
It just says heaven. It don't matter which one it is.
Where's it going?
It says it's coming down. So if it's coming down out of heaven, there's only one place it can go. Because Sheol doesn't exist anymore. That's been thrown into the lake of fire.
And the sea don't exist no more.
The sea metaphorically doesn't exist anymore. Remember, sea, nations, all that other stuff.
I think that's waters. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
So the only thing left is the earth. That's the only logical conclusion that's left.
Hey, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Unless you're going to say you can't even say the clouds, because the clouds is also, the sky is a heaven. So.
Yeah, that's true.
There's only one place left. It's the earth.
Oh, man.
So and then of course verse 4, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'm just gonna say that death would no longer exist. So there's a whole lot more verses you can go to talk about this, that there's going to be a bodily resurrection. So this is not unique to the black church. It's pretty much teaching in Christianity in general. It's not unique to the black church. However, because of slavery and because of Jim Crow and a lot of other things that have happened,
R.I.P.
black people needed a comfort.
That's where R.I.P. comes from.
Yeah, and really took hold of this doctrine and used it to bring comfort to ourselves.
Understandably.
Yeah,
just don't know.
It's not something that needs to be attacked.
Right.
It just needs to be understood.
Right. We want to have compassion when it comes to this, because we understand of why our people took hold of this so strongly and so firmly, because of the oppression, because of the injustice. So, yeah, I just want to lay that down, but go ahead. Yeah, so we really took hold of this. So we got to go to the root. This one in particular does start very early. I think I got that.
Yeah, it starts real early. So
I think I got that. I think I do.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
So this is just what I found. We go to heaven when we die. So where did this doctrine come from? It's called the beatific vision.
Mm-hmm.
The immediate face-to-face knowledge of Elohim that believers experience in heaven, which brings ultimate and perfect happiness. It was a decree by Pope Benedict VII, which was Benedictus Deus, which is in 1336. Pope Benedict VII resolved the beatific vision controversy, which questioned if the souls of the righteous saw Elohim immediately after death or after the last judgment. In his 1336 bull, Benedictus Deus, he defined the doctrine that souls are granted intuitive, face-to-face vision of the divine essence immediately after death. This ended a debate that had been stirred by his predecessor, John the 22nd, who had preached the vision was delayed until after Judgment Day, prior to him passing, and withdrew his former opinion.
So, Even before that, though.
Oh, okay.
Even before that.
That's the only source I got.
Yeah, even before that. That's important now. That is important. I was going to skip that, but that is important to note. We got to remember that the early church fathers, many of whom were black, but they were still in Greek lands and they spoke Greek and they were very much Hellenized, which means that they were influenced heavily by Greek philosophy and Greek thought. In fact, there's a lot of issues in Christianity that just comes about just because of Greek thought and Greek philosophy, even the Greek language. That's actually, side note, if you ever want to learn why the Orthodox Church split from the Catholic Church, a lot of it has to literally just do with the differences between Latin and Greek. So they would say the same things, but something that might have not that deep of a meaning in Latin has this super in-depth philosophical terminology in Greek. And now the Greeks have this thought process, and the Latin people are like, what are y'all talking about? Right? A lot, like, it's some of the confusion is just that. So because Greek is just naturally, the language is naturally unbelievably philosophical, you start having this issue with the soul and the body. Now, in Greek thought, depending on the school of Greek philosophy you're looking at, particularly Plato and Aristotle and those people, the physical world is imperfect. It's got problems. And the spiritual world is superior, right? So the way they view things is your spirit, man, your soul is like trapped inside of this physical prison. The body was a prison. So if you've ever heard people say that this body is a physical prison, it's coming from this. That is not a biblical concept. That's not Hebrew at all. That is Greek philosophy. That is Plato. That's Aristotle.
And then the Gnostics just...
Yeah. So the Gnostic Christians took that and they went way to the left with it.
We're going to talk about that too.
Right. I'll briefly touch on it real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. The Gnostics essentially said, well, if the world is imperfect, then the creator can't be perfect. So in the Gnostic Christian view, they actually made the Old Testament God the bad guy. Like he is actually the villain in Gnostic Christianity. So, and then their views also influenced a lot of the Luciferian ideas that a lot of the elites have. But that's another conversation.
So, if you remember the last episode that we did where I was telling them having a conversation where people would say like the Old Testament God is evil, the New Testament God is good. That's Gnosticism. That's
like
a form of Gnosticism.
That's a watered down Gnosticism.
Basically, from what I understand, the Gnostics believe that the Old Testament God was the demiurge, and that was the evil God, and then Jesus, that's how they presented it. I'm not saying Yahusha, how they say it. Jesus is the actual good loving God that's here to take us away and to free us from the demiurge.
Yeah. So Gnosticism, they're trying to understand the world through the Greek philosophical lens while still holding them, and that's the resolution they came to. Now, obviously, Gnosticism actually was mostly a Alexandrian thing, by the way. It mostly lived in Egypt, in Greek parts of Egypt. And it really didn't spread as much as people think it did, but it just, in the time period that it was active, that thing had a hold.
I think Paul went against it.
No, Paul didn't go against it.
I think where they said that you need to abstain from certain foods.
No, that was just a Greek ideology, but that wasn't
so that
Gnosticism.
You can, see angels and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that was just a Greek philosophical thing. That had nothing. That was just another branch of philosophy. That was not Gnosticism. Gnosticism showed up later.
Okay.
But that's how Gnosticism came about, was because they were trying to make sense of that. So in more mainstream Christianity, they rejected that. They didn't recognize, Yah as evil in any sort of way, but they still had to try to resolve in their minds this idea that the physical world is imperfect and kind of dirty and all this other stuff, but the spiritual world is superior. So a lot of the church fathers, for example, they allegorized away all scripture. All of scripture is just a big allegory, all of it. That's one way they did it. So another way they did it was they kept the idea that the human body is kind of a prison for the spirit, which means if that's the case, then the resurrection has to be purely a spiritual one, not a physical one. So they basically spiritualize the resurrection away. And then that begins to evolve and change until you get to the papal bull that had to be set up, because now you start having issues trying to resolve this with scripture, because, again, it doesn't make sense. It's contradicting. And then that develops into, again, now people just go to heaven when they die. The resurrection is instantaneous and it's purely spiritual. That's what happened. It got spiritualized away. So by the time you get to slavery and you have our people who are getting beat to death, you have slave masters literally putting cigarettes out on the backs of the slaves, doing all kinds of stuff. And then we get out of that, and then we go into Jim Crow and everything else. And we started to really hold on to this because it was almost like we weren't looking at it from that Greek philosophical point where the world is just dirty. We were looking at it like, man, life sucks. So, but the sooner we get to heaven, the better. As soon as we die and get to heaven, it's all over. Everything. Even listen to a lot of those Negro spirituals. I know a lot of Hebrews want to look at the Negro spirituals and think that we were actually trying to teach our people that we were Israelites. And the ones that knew that we were Israelites might have been doing that. But a lot of the slaves didn't know they were either, because they were coming from Africa, and they were coming from, a lot of that was beat out of them. And the ones that managed to retain some social memory, the history is not as clean as we want it to be. So the ones that didn't know, they were singing these songs trying to encourage themselves and the people around them, like, hey, we gotta just do the best we can here. And we know it's bad for us here, but when we get to heaven, it'll be good. And then, of course, our situation started to change again. Now we're not in those same dire straits, but the mindset has maintained and it's stayed. That, hey, we live this life now, but we're going to get to heaven one day, and boy, oh boy, everything will be good and just jolly. But Scripture does not teach that. Scripture teaches a bodily resurrection. The soul and the body, they're not as conjoined as a lot of, let's say, scholars want to make it out to be biblically. There is a separation, but the body and the soul, they do operate together. All of it operates together, and it's designed to operate together. Now, I do agree, and I think you would agree too, that there is corruption that has occurred with our physical body, and that corruption could technically be, if somebody wants to argue, could be with every part of us except our spirit, because that literally comes from the Father. But there is definitely corruption. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between something being corrupted versus something being imperfect from the jump. But yeah, that's the key thing. The resurrection is bodily. Isaiah talks about that. Daniel talks about that. If you want to go into some of the Second Temple and apocryphal and pseudepigraphal books, Enoch talks about that. Does Jubilees talk about it?
What?
The bodily resurrection? I think it does. The gospel accounts definitely talk about it. All of them talk about a bodily resurrection.
Yeah. Like I said, we went to Daniel, Psalm 16, 9 and 10. Even though it is prophetic, David is still saying something interesting. Psalm 16, 9 and 10. Therefore my heart rejoiced and my tongue exalted. Moreover, my flesh shall rest in hope or expectation. Because you will not leave my soul in hell. Neither will you suffer your set apart one to see corruption. Right? Of course, we know that is the Messiah, but we also know that David is looking forward to this resurrection. So another one is in Job. Job 14. 10 through 14. But a man that has died is utterly gone, and when a mortal has fallen, he is no more. For the sea wastes the length of time, and the rivers fails and is dried up. And a man that has laid down in death shall certainly not rise again till the heaven be dissolved, and they shall not awake from their sleep. For oh, that you had kept me in the grave, and had hid me in your wrath should cease, and you would set me a time when you would remember me. So he's talking about a resurrection. For if a man should die, shall he live again? Having accomplished the days of his life, I will wait till I exist again. Then you would call, and I will listen to you, but do not reject the work of your hands. That's actually down to verse 15.
I think it's Isaiah 14 that I'm thinking about, where he says, my dead body will rise also.
Might be Isaiah 26. Let me see if I have that one. Start at verse 18. Isaiah 26 and 18. We have conceived, O Yahuwah, because of your fear, and have been in pain, and have brought forth the breach of your salvation, which ye have brought on the earth. We shall not fall, but all that dwell upon the land shall fall. The dead shall rise, and they that are in the tombs shall be raised, and they that are in the earth shall rejoice. For the dew from you is healing to them, but the land of the ungodly shall perish. Now I'm reading from the Septuagint. Or everything I just read is from the Septuagint. Go, my people, enter into your closets, shut your door, hide your face for a little season, until the anger of Yahuwah has passed away. That's going down to verse 20. I know it's another one.
There's Isaiah 66.
Isaiah 66, let me see.
Yeah, but that's a little bit more talking about the restoration of Israel. But even with the restoration of Israel, if you read it, there's a lot of things that require resurrection in order for some of that to occur. Yeah, I don't know if we made our point.
Well, the one thing that I'm showing, we're all showing from the Old Testament that the resurrection of the dead is not a new concept that's in the Gospels, or even with Paul's letters. Is to show that when we die, there's a waiting period. Matter of fact, let's just go to Paul, because everyone goes to Paul. So let's just go to Paul real quick. What is that?
Now, I do want to address something Stephen said in Acts 2. So when he got stoned,
he said, "Receive my spirit."
Receive my spirit. But we got
He said, "My spirit."
Yeah, spirit. So you got to remember that the spirit returns to Elohim anyway.
Yeah, that's in
the spirit is something different. When remember with Adam, he breathed into him the spirit, and he became a living soul, right? So that spirit, when man dies, according to Ecclesiastes,
it goes back,
returns to the Father. That goes back to the giver of life, or the source of life at this point. I would say the source of life. That goes back to the source of life. That's really what that spirit is. And there's more to the spirit than just that, but that's what the spirit is. It's the thing giving you life. So the Father's the one who gave it. It gives you life.
That's what animates.
When the life is gone from you, that spirit returns back to the Father.
Inspired.
But that is not your nefesh. That's not your soul. The soul is the thing that goes into Sheol. The soul is you. That's you.
Like your personality, your desires, your appetites, the things that you like, the things that you want, like who you are as a person.
Your decision making, all of that is nefesh.
Yes, that's your soul. That's not your spirit.
Right. So that is what's going to Sheol. That is the thing that is trying to be saved. Your ruach is the thing that the Father gives you that is giving you life,
That's incorruptible.
right? So, yeah.
But your soul can be corrupted. And then your body is already jacked up.
One could argue that the nefesh is already corrupted, and it just has to make decisions that it doesn't want to go that way. One could argue that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, one could argue. I kind of see it as...
I'll put it this way. I'm not going to say your nefesh is corrupt. I wouldn't say it that way. I would say your nefesh has the
ability to be corrupted,
has the understanding of corruption, and you have the choice of which direction you want to go.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
because if we go to the garden, they didn't have the knowledge of evil, right? Technically, one could argue they didn't even have the knowledge of good, but they only had the knowledge that the Father gave them, but they didn't have any knowledge of good outside of what the Father gave them.
I don't think they even knew that was good or not.
Yeah, they didn't even know, right? So,
but they knew the consequences. Though.
They knew the consequences.
I don't think they understood the consequences.
They didn't understand anything other than what the Father told them, right? So, you have the ability to choose good and evil. You have the ability to choose order or chaos, right?
Life or death.
Like you have the ability to choose these things.
Left and right.
So you can choose whether to go down the path of corruption or the path of, at least trying to keep yourself as straight as possible. And then your body just wants what it wants. It just has desires. It's not really thinking about whether it's good or evil. It just wants what it wants.
Feed me.
Yeah, it just wants what it wants.
All right, so we're going to. I think I'm gonna bring this to the point. 1 Thessalonians 4, starting at verse 13. 1 Thessalonians 4, starting at verse 13, going down to 18. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers. I don't want y'all to be ignorant, brothers. This is what Shaul is. This is what Paul is saying. I don't want you to be ignorant. I don't want you to be uninformed. I'm going to let you know. I don't want you not to know, so I'm going to tell you. So I don't want you to be uninformed about those who are asleep. Those who are dead. I'm going to let you know something. I don't want you to be uninformed about those who are dead, that you may not grieve as others who have no hope. Have no hope, right? Don't grieve like the other people do, because they ain't got no hope. I want you to understand something. For since we believe that Yahusha died and rose again, even so, through Yahusha, Elohim will bring with him, Yahusha, those who have fallen asleep. For this we declare to you by the word from Yahuwah. That we...
Go ahead, finish reading.
Go
finish reading.
Go ahead.
Finish reading.
What's the word?
Because I got a couple things. That's what I'm saying. Finish reading.
Okay. I want me to read all the way down to 18?
Go ahead.
Okay. For this we declare to you by a word from Yahuwah, by a word from the Master, that we who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Master, we will not precede those who have fallen asleep, who have died. For the Master himself will descend from the heaven with the cry of a command, with the voice of the chief messenger, with the sound of the trumpet of Elohim, and the dead in Mashiach will rise first. Then we, who are alive, who are left, will be caught up together with them. Who is the them? The ones that were dead, who got risen up when we saw Yahusha in the air. When we see Yahusha in the air, I would say. With them in the clouds to meet the Master in the air, and we will always be with the Master. That's when we will always be with the Master. Therefore, encourage one another with these words.
Okay,
This is Paul talking after the resurrection.
So this is a couple of things. So point one, I want to talk about the grief. Point two, I want to talk about the 144,000 and the return of the Mashiach. Okay.
All right, we can end on those three.
Yeah, and just make sure I don't forget. So first, with the grieving.
What was the point one again? I'm playing.
With the grieving, Paul is not saying don't grieve if somebody dies. That's not what the man is saying. Please don't sit up here if somebody's mother in the walk passes away and they're crying. It's a sin to grieve. That is not what the man is saying. Please don't do that. He said we don't want to grieve like those without hope. So if somebody dies and somebody in the walk is grieving their death, comfort them with those words, with hope and expectation. Do not,
and a hug.
Do not tell them it is a sin to grieve. And you bet not send them any of our videos as an excuse to tell them it's a sin to grieve. Because if you send that to them and they end up saying something to me or him, I'm going to you. Don't do that. Please.
Don't put my name on it.
Let these people grieve. Comfort them with those words. That's what it's saying.
Give them a hug.
All right. Help them out. All right. Point number 2, 144,000.
I forgot point number 3. I'm not going to lie to
you. We'll blend them together because I kind of remember.
Okay.
Point number 2 and 3. The Mashiach's return is physical, correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
I hope so.
So
I expect it.
So if his return is physical, and even most Christians agree that we're going to be reigning with him physically.
They said we're seated in heavenly places right now, reigning with him. So
that's got to be a preterist. That's a preterist. That's yeah.
Some people say that, bro.
So if his return is physical, that makes it very clear that the dead are going to rise physically, and that the people who are here who didn't die but are in him are going to rise and be changed. They don't have to die. They're just going to be changed in that moment. All of this has to be physical. Then you go to Revelations and you see when he returns, there's going to be some fighting. There's going to be wars. There's going to be all kinds of stuff in Revelations 19. And then 20, you have the 1,000-year reign. All of this is happening physically on the earth. Mm-hmm. So the 144,000 had to be resurrected physically. And it says they are the first resurrection. And it's physical.
And those who have died and got beheaded.
Right. It's physical. So that means the second resurrection, the one that I read about in 20, the Great White Throne Judgment, where that's everybody, by the way. That is the righteous and the wicked are being resurrected physically. So when it says it's the second death, they literally are being thrown into a lake of fire and dying a second time. It's literal death twice. That's got to suck. Imagine being brought back. Imagine being brought back to life. Just to be like,
just to die again.
Just to die again. That's gotta suck. Man, that's rough.
All right. So now, I do want to caveat off of that real quick. Some people say, they use that 1 Thessalonians 4 as a rapture. Yeah, nah, dog. Nah. Just cut it off right
now. Yeah, they're the blink in they say the blink in the twinkling of an eye.
Yeah, that's the rapture.
It's the rapture, but
nah, bro. No.
No.
I'm sorry. It's incorrect.
No.
And we just proved that it was incorrect because the dead are gonna rise first at the coming of the Master. They're gonna see him. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go to Hebrews. I'm gonna go to Hebrews as well. For those that believe in the rapture. So that means you believe that the Messiah came. He's gonna come a secret time. And he's gonna come again. That's 3. We're gonna get to that. But now you might have some people that say, hey, in Revelation 1 through 4, you got church. But after that, you don't get the church until later on in Revelation. I forgot exactly where they say that. But basically the church has been raptured. That's how we know the church has been raptured, because church is mentioned in chapters 1 through 4. So my question is this. Revelation 6.
Where y'all be getting this stuff from? I'm sorry, go ahead.
In Revelation 6, starting at verse 9. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw the altar, the souls of those who had been slain for the word of Elohim and for the witness or the testimony they had borne. They cried out with a loud voice, O sovereign Yahuwah, set apart and true, how long before you will judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Then they were each given a white robe and told to rest a little while until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers should be complete, who were to be killed as they were themselves had been. So if the church is gone, who are these people that ain't died yet? If the church got raptured, who are these people that are alive, that are about that haven't got killed yet? He's planning on getting them killed, right? They're gonna be killed for the testimony, for the word of Elohim and the testimony. If that ain't the church, who is it? That's all I'm saying. Now, this is the last point that I'm gonna make. So once again, just to recap, rapture. He came the first time, then this is the secret thing that he's gonna come a second time and just gather people up. Oh, I'm gonna secretly come and get y'all.
And the rapture has a whole history behind it too.
But ain't nobody gonna know that I got y'all, except for know that I got y'all. And then I'm gonna come back with glory and esteem, and everybody gonna see me.
And the rapture has a whole separate history to it too.
So that's 3 times. That's 3 times. It's not 2.5. It's 3. If he came one time, then he's coming to get some other people. And then he comes again. That's 3. Okay? So, Hebrews 9, starting at verse 25, going down to 28. Nor was it to offer himself repeatedly as the high priest enters the set-apart place every year with the blood of his own. For then he would have had to suffer repeatedly since the foundation of the world. But as it is, he has appeared once. He has appeared once for all at the end of the age to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And just as it is appointed for a man to die once, and after that the judgment comes, so Messiah, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who are eagerly waiting for him. 2, second coming. Not rapture, second coming. The second coming of Messiah. Okay? So, in conclusion,
that's just one myth.
Yeah, that's just one myth about,
That's just one myth. We got a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but we kind of put two myths together.
Yeah.
Put the rapture.
But the rapture was just kind of thrown in because it kind of had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even with the rapture, again, that I want to say this a third time. There's a whole history behind the rapture. But the rapture really couldn't exist without some sort of spiritualization of, at least the way it's presented. Well, I take that back. The rapture is almost like the opposite end of the spiritualization of the resurrection.
What do you mean by that?
Because the resurrection, the spiritualization of the resurrection has essentially ended with people saying you end up going to heaven and being spiritually resurrected now, right? That's essentially what it's turned into. Because you die, you go to heaven.
Yeah.
Right. So they spiritualized the resurrection away.
Oh yeah, you was talking about that.
Yeah. So essentially, you spiritually resurrect now when you die.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas the rapture is saying, no, there still is a physical resurrection, and it's still going to happen at a later time, but it happens secretly.
Yeah.
So it happens later secretly. It's like they're trying to, but again, the rapture is just a totally different beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas what we're talking about, people going to heaven immediately when they die, that's just one of those things that evolved over time. Nobody was trying to trick you or anything like that. It just happened over time. Whereas the rapture actually was a doctrine that was specifically created. But yeah.
But anyway, so we pray this episode was a blessing, a barakah to you. So we thank you all for listening. Thank you for being here. So may Yahuwah barak you and guard you. May Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and show favor unto you. May Yahuwah lift up his face towards you and give you shalom. Thus you should put my name on the children of Yashar, and I myself shall baruch them. So, in the name of Yahusha, we say, shalom.
Shalom.